Okay. So we also talked about this one a little bit, but burning to destroy versus putting to like burning to put out into the universe. Now, I firmly align with burning to destroy. And I know Rebecca often will burn to like put out into the universe and the
Yeah.
world. And so this is one of the few aspects actually I wish we practiced differently, but I don't think that now correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that you are also open to burn to destroy. With you, it lies more with your intention.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With me, I mean, obviously, always I like utilize my intention, but my intention never pushes me towards like burning to put out into the universe. Because again, as someone with 6 out of the 12 placements being Cancer alone, not even other signs, Cancer alone, water makes me like very nervous. And
Or fire
oh,
and
that's not
Scorpio.
true. That I included Scorpio in that too. And I don't think that I have any Pisces in me. Um,
No.
but being like water placements,
Yeah.
fire makes me nervous. And I see fire now. I use fire, right? It's one of the elements. It doesn't make me so nervous that I'm not going to use it. I do utilize it, but I very much see fire as destroying. And so I see it to end, to sever, to collapse. I see it as like turning something whole into ash. And so I see it as destroying. So if I want to destroy something, I'll put it into the fire or write it and then burn the paper and it has ended, right? I'm severing connections or severing my binds or whatever it may be. Now, versus to put out. So when I say put out, I mean like to put out into the universe. And the way that I think about this is my mind goes to practical magic
Uh-huh.
where when she's the little girl and she's like creating her perfect man so that he never is born or whatever, but she has all the flowers in the bowl and then she holds the bowl up and the wind takes the flowers and puts them into the universe. And that's kind of how I visualize people who use fire to burn. It's this aspect of putting something into ash and then the ash kind of getting taken away out into the universe. And so it makes sense to me. I just don't align with it. But you like burn it to carry it out.
Yeah, to carry it. And then also, like, I like that you put transmutation because so there's like a book that I'm reading, and we both, Raven and I, are avid readers.
Yes.
And so we read, and we often read witchy books. So there's like a book that I'm reading, and let me actually get the author so I can give credit where credit is due. It is Lynn Llewellyn, and it is like it's like the Bone Dolls twin is like the first in the series.
Nice.
And yeah, I'm on like the third in the series, and it's fabulous. But the whole like there's like this whole huge like transformation of, and I don't want to give anything away, but there's this whole huge transformation like, and it like the old thing is burned off of the body like completely, so that like it is like completely it transmutes like this person from one thing to another. And I was like, I love that. It
Mm-hmm.
is, and it was you. It like there was like this fire that did it, and
Mm-hmm.
so I like that. I like the idea of like fire as purifying. I even how I associate swords with fire. It's because it's like it purifies like things like fire purifies and it burns it away in a way that like makes it like new and pure and like burns off the dross
Yeah. See,
something.
and I see it that way too, but I see it so like going back, which I haven't read that book, but going back to like something old burning off, it in my mind, it's like severing that connection to the old self. You are ending the old, I see it as like her arm burning off or whatever, but like you're killing that old aspect of yourself versus you seeing it as like transferring or changing. With me, it's like ending. So it's still
Changing. It could be
transmutation.
ending, but I
Yeah.
and I also like the idea of putting it like that smoke, like the the fruits of the burn are like the smoke goes out into the ether.
Mm,
So it like kind of fills crevices and goes, so like it's like the idea of like it actually puts those particulates of transmuted energy out into the
mm,
universe.
mm.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we
Interesting.
definitely, and definitely because I have
A lot of
like
fire.
yeah, my and well my main yeah, my the sign that I like my sun sign is fire. So it's definitely something that's in me. Although my right I'm pretty actually well balanced in my signs in my chart.
Mm,
But I definitely I'm not afraid of fire. It doesn't make me nervous.
yeah.
I'm fine working with it and use it in a variety of ways, I think. So,
I wanted to see, um, so let's see. I wanted to see how many fire things I have. So I have, yeah,
do you have any?
yeah, I have a couple. So I have, I actually do. So I have two fires, one earth, one air, and six water. So I do have some fire, but I'm just so watery, man.
You
I'm
are.
like super
You are.
watery. Yeah. Um, okay, cool.
Okay.
So the next, what are we banishing? Again, we talked about this one last time as well, but anything, people, habits, energy, sickness, and so we talked previously about like, should we banish people? We talked about how we're both fine with that. Is there anything we shouldn't banish? And in my mind, anything that you want to call back like immediately. We talked also last time about how like when you banish something, that doesn't necessarily mean it's banished forever, right? Like it might and often does kind of slowly creep back. But a lot of times, at least in my experience, when I banish something, it takes time for it to kind of creep back. And so if I want to call something away, or if I want to like banish something, but I know I'm going to want to call it back next week, I wouldn't banish it because it's going to take time to come back and get through that banishing. So for my practice, I think you can banish anything that you want. And but keeping in mind that it takes time to come back. And so I wouldn't want to banish something that I'm going to want to call back soon. That's the only thing that I don't banish really.
And okay, so and it kind of goes along with that idea of cord cutting. I think that's like cord cutting can be a form of banishing as well,
Yeah, sure.
for sure.
Yeah.
And like okay, so I have like weird like there's this like tinkling feeling like sometimes inside me like I don't want to banish that person or I don't want to banish even though I know I should or I know like they're not good for me or I know this like habit or this thing isn't good for me. There's like I like hang on to it and like
Mhm.
I don't and if you're that's like the whole point. If your intention isn't there, then it's not going to be like it's not going to work. So if you have that like
Yeah.
feeling in the back of your heart or in the back of your head that you don't really want to banish this person, place, or thing, it's not going to be
Yeah.
banished. Like even if you go
Yeah.
through like all the things, it's not
Yeah.
your intention has to be true.
Yeah.
Um, and that's for shadow work. Getting your intention in the right place could be like a whole thing for like shadow work and for doing some soul searching to see like why are you hanging on to this thing that like rationally is not good for you or rationally like you should be getting rid of or you should
Yeah.
have no problem banishing but something in you like that's how I get like something in me like doesn't and let me tell you it's better to get right and to banish that thing because those things are haunting.
Yeah.
Like once I can finally get right with that and do like a full banishing like from my heart, like it's things are so much better. It's those things that I hang that like have like hooks inside me that like I just can't quite bring myself to banish. Those are things that are just they cause me so much fucking trouble. I swear.
Yeah.
Like people especially.
Yeah. I agree. And I think that that's why I usually see banishing as like the last step, right? Because if this thing, person, thing, whatever, if I still feel like it has its hooks in me, like to an extent, then that means that I am not going to go in full hearted, full
Exactly.
force into the banishing, which I agree, intention is everything. We've talked about that a lot too. And so I would probably work on myself or, shadow work or whatever, meditation, whatever it is, working on myself to be okay with releasing that. And then banishing would be like the last step in cutting those ties.
Yes,
Yeah.
agreed. So, yeah. I know. And even so, like I think it almost like if you like it almost like strengthens those like it's funny, but if you go in and try to like mess with things that still have its hooks inside you instead of like trying to figure out why the hooks are inside you and getting those hooks out of you before you banish, like
Mhm.
it can almost strengthen like the hook that is in you. Like
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Intention is always the most important in our mind, like in the way that we practice. Intention is number one, always.
yes.
Always intention is number one. And so if you are doing some type of working and your intention isn't fully able to be there, then you're kind of just gunking everything up. Like, yeah, you can reinforce the hooks inside of you or
Yeah.
allow other things to come in or whatever.
Yes.
I agree. Okay. And then liminal spaces. So this is, I think, my longest like thing. So let's talk
Interesting.
about liminal spaces. So a liminal space essentially is some type of threshold, time, a place, a state of mind that is kind of in between. It's where one thing is transitioning into another thing. Now, I have some examples, but then we're going to go. I have like a list of different liminal spaces and things like that. So, physical spaces, things like doorways, bridges, shorelines, crossroads, forest edges, abandoned buildings, hallways. They're not really exactly one place or another, but they're a point of passage, they're a transition. And we're going to talk about, let me just see, I think I'm going to go into each of these a little bit more. I do a little bit. So then we have temporal spaces. So twilight, which means like time, right? Temporal is like time. So
Time.
twilight, the
Exactly.
moment before you sleep, midnight, when the seasons are changing. Again, they're kind of at this point of in between. And I think the moment before sleep is like a big one. This is one of the reasons why I love meditating to fall asleep, like purposefully falling asleep in my meditation, because it's such like an open, liminal, like somewhat esoteric place. And I love playing in that area.
I love that.
um, Psychological or spiritual states. So, like moments of transformation. So, like birth or coming of age, a period of grief, some type of initiation, or any type of altered states of consciousness. So, like if you're in a trance or like in ritual space mentally. So let's go through. I have a list of these and I kind of break them down even more.
I love
So, shorelines, we
it.
have
Ooh.
seashores, riverbeds, lake edges, marshes. I love a good marsh, wells, springs. These are all places where the water is meeting the land and the land is meeting the water. And so they are liminal because they're the point of in between, right? When you're standing on a beach, and your feet are buried, like sinking slowly into the sand, but water is also coming up and hitting your feet. That's a magical space because you have both land and water that are meeting and coming together. I love water. I would also add, now I didn't see anything of this like online or any books or anything, but I would also add like the space where waterfalls hit the ground or
Oh,
hit
I
the
love that.
water, because you have the body of water time. I mean, they're both water, but you have the water and air mixture of the water going through the air going into just a pool of water, or especially if a waterfall is hitting land, like that space where the water is hitting the earth, I think is very powerful.
Yes, I agree. And you know what? There's like this whole ionization thing that's happening,
Mhm.
like at water's edges and at like
Mhm.
seashores and like when like waterfalls are hitting the ground. Like it's really like a powerful space that people don't really understand. Like it's healing and powerful and
Yes,
yeah.
agreed. Agreed. So then natural boundaries. So forest edges, mountain passes, cliff edges, caves, especially. I feel like every good witch loves a good cave.
I love a
And
cave.
I love a cave. I love it, especially if you can hear water dripping in the cave.
Ooh, I love a cave. I love a wet cave. I love a cave.
I love a cave. A cave is one of my I have two like mind spaces like when I meditate. I mean, I can, go anywhere, but I have two like reoccurring kind of like safe spaces in my meditation like world, my mental world, and one of them is a cave.
Nice.
Yeah, so cave, especially because it's kind of like an entry into like the underworld, right? You're like quite literally you are going under the earth in a cave, often, not always, but often you're going like under the earth. So again, we have this meeting of spaces. Now, I man-made, meh, eh. I wouldn't really focus on man-made like liminal spaces because I don't I don't know. The man-made just like takes the magic out of it. But some people, I do find that a lot of people talk about liminal spaces by man-made things. I say man, I should say person-made, but man-made even makes it less magical in my mind. But we have doorways, bridges, any type of like a gateway, like a physical gateway, or like a man-made or person-made archway, not like arches like in Utah or whatever, but like actual man-made arches. Now, I think that if it is man-made, it now we're not talking, let me clarify, not like specifically made by witches, but if we're just talking about like human made spaces, those automatically have less magic than something that's natural. And so, again, I mean, if you're looking for a liminal space and you're not by any of these other spaces, go for man made, if you need a space. But I don't really consider man made spaces liminal spaces, really. So then we have places of the dead, so graveyard gates and barrow mounds, which is like in Celtic tradition where they would basically like uh, pour mounds of dirt over like a mass grave like site. It doesn't have to be big grave site, but over mass like it's like a burial site. Even if there's like 4 or 5 bodies, then they would bury them and then just pour like a big hill of dirt over everything.
Yeah.
And so so places of the dead obviously are very liminal spaces. I think a lot of people can feel that going into like graveyards or into like places of burial because it's a place of the living and the dead. And then transitional terrain, so things like Crossroads and Borderlands. So I would think that the most common liminal spaces that are talked about in practice, at least from my experience, would be graveyards and Crossroads. But there's all of these other ones as well.
And
So
crossroads can be pretty man-made too, I have to say. They don't have to be, but they certainly can be man-made.
yes, I agree. But I also think that it's not really a true crossroad unless it's like, in my mind, it's not a true crossroad unless the crossroad, like the roads are on dirt and the path is paved because of time of usage. Like, I wouldn't consider like a purposefully plowed road, like or two that transect, I wouldn't consider those crossroad spaces. In my mind, a crossroad space is where two paths cross, and the paths are there because it has been trampled on so much, you
Mhm.
know. So I agree. Crossroad can definitely be man-made and kind of often are, but I don't really consider it in my practice a true crossroad unless it's been there a long time. And that's why the road is there, almost like a path as
Well-worn
opposed to a road.
path for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I agree with you though. So I think I have one more thing. Yeah, and then we'll have a combo about it. So do liminal spaces destabilize or reset energy patterns? Now, for my own belief, I wouldn't say that it destabilizes or resets them, but I would say it kind of like removes blocks made by this world. So I think that our world, like this planet, has a lot of like gunky stuff in it, right? And so it's not like, I mean, because it is like some of the gunk is negative, like pollution and stuff, but it's just like um a lot of humanness to it, like a lot of greed and a lot of
Yeah.
um just negativity. And so I think when you go to a luminal space, you're not really changing anything, but it's kind of like it's a space that's clearing out some of that gunk.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I so again, I don't think that they like change anything, but I think that it's kind of like a little bit of a clearing of some of that like gunk that is just created because we're people and we create gunk. And so I think that the liminal spaces kind of like lifts that curtain of gunk a little bit, but I wouldn't necessarily say it changes anything. What
Well,
do you think?
yeah, so I think there's also like this psychological phenomenon. I always say that like going through a doorway, um, it erases your memory. And there's like evidence to support that. Like it's a psychological phenomenon when we go from one room to the other or go into through a doorway,
Mm-hmm.
like it's like the memory is like reset. Like
Mm,
so that's I kind of think that there's that, and I kind of think that that's an interesting place where we put like herbs and things that we want to keep out or things that we want to bring in is like on
mm,
a doorway, and I think that
mm,
that's um I think that it destabilizes. I do think that it destabilizes our like energy, like liminal
mm,
spaces, like even like ionization or like all sorts of liminal spaces, like going to sleep, like that liminal, like I think all that it like destabilizes energy so that we can bring in things and push out other things. It gives us like this moment in the world where we can like push things around. Like where a lot of times we're really stuck in our lives, and I think that like just in our thinking or the ways we do things, and I think like these liminal places um and just patterns of like the way we live in the world, like liminal spaces that even we've created and as humans, like it resets those energies in a way that gives us space to do different things.
interesting. So it sounds like we agree in like what in the aftermath of liminal space. Like we both agree that liminal space is about like your ability to shift things and change things. And I agree with that. But we disagree a little bit with the process of how that happens, I think. You consider like destabilizing, but I consider almost like you consider destabilizing of like humanness to an extent, and I consider like removing or like clearing some of the gunk of humanness. So it sounds like we're in agreement in like the effect of a liminal space, just like how it changes. Like
Yeah.
we disagree a little bit. Cool.
Yeah. I yeah, I guess I think so, and I think like a lot so, like many traditions use especially like that doorway kind of space.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's like an even though like it's human made,
Mm-hmm.
it's like an oft used space for magic. Like whether it's like God passing over every doorway that's marked with the lamb's blood, or whether it's like putting up like banishing herbs or protection herbs across our archway. I think like that's a huge one.
Mm,
Um, but I also I like tween times. I think tween
mm.
times are really powerful, and
Yeah,
yeah.
I
So,
agree with
yeah.
that for sure. I think that the tween times is powerful, and I also think that ritual space, like I said, being in that ritual mindset, I also consider like a liminal space. Um, and I think that that's really powerful too. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Let's see how many more topics we have. Not a ton. Okay, cool. So next, do strong boundaries make banishing obsolete? And we kind of already talked about this a little bit, but I don't really have much to say on this. But I don't think anything is impenetrable, right? I don't think anything is absolutely 100% impenetrable. The thing that automatically comes to mind is the Titanic, right? Thinking that it's unsinkable when clearly it wasn't. And so I don't think anything is fully and completely impenetrable. So I think that, like, again, we've already talked about this, like things can and often do come back if you banish them. Like, I don't think that there's many things that are going to stay forever, and especially if you have, like, I think about a person. Let's say I was in a bad relationship, right? Let's just say it was like physically abusive or something,
Yeah.
something bad. And on my end, I've severed that tie and I've banished. But that person probably is unlikely to agree. And so I think that me banishing that person is not going to make them disappear from my life forever, right? I think that things can come back. But I think that that's when you utilize like your strength and the power of yourself, and you can rebanish if you want or deal with it another way, whatever. But I don't think anything is impenetrable. It's the same with protection. I think that protection does, protect us, but I also think there's a lot of things that are going to be able to get through protection. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't think we can control other people, places, and things. So we
Um,
can't control like what other people are going to do or what other entities are about, or
yeah.
we don't control that. And I think that banishing can be a part of like setting up strong boundaries. So you set up strong boundaries based on your needs and desires, and you can maintain those. But also, like, part of that can be like to just banish those entities to like, or people or whatever, um to kind of even get them far away from your boundaries. Like you're pushing them even farther out, where a boundary just kind of is around you, and
Yeah.
like they can come up against that boundary. Like you don't control that. Like you just
Yeah.
like, control what you do. So you can move away and move away, where banishing finally says, I'm like not moving, you're getting the fuck out. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I think it can be, I don't think like one takes away the other. I think it's more like the difference between, like, I think strong boundaries are a part of like shadow work and what we do and how we set up our life. And banishing is about like just kind of like pushing other people, places, and things farther away.
Yeah.
Even
I
though
agree.
you can't control them, you can like repel them farther than they might otherwise be if you just set up a boundary that like isn't repulsive or
Yeah.
that way.
I agree. Okay. So do we become more entangled when we banish? Now, my viewpoint is this, yeah, but momentarily. So I think of it as, like you just said, actually pushing somebody away. Now, if I am at like full extended arm, I'm not going to be able to push them very far, right? Physically, somebody's coming at me, I want to push them away. But if I have the space to bring you closer, I'm going to have more power to push you away. And that's how I see banishing. I think, yeah, you do kind of bring them in and become a bit more entangled momentarily so that you can have that push and that, like, you have more room and more space and more power to push them away.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I see this. Also, side note, I looked this up. What's the difference between farther and further? I didn't know. But
Uh-huh.
farther is for physical distance, further is for figurative distance. So there you go.
Yeah. Exactly.
um, but yeah, so pushing someone farther or further away if you do bring them closer. So that's kind of how I see that is like, yeah, but not for any like significant period of time, really.
No, and I think like we do because there is like a measure of that because you have to know, I think there's like if you want to you have to know its name or you have to like if like
Yeah,
all the other ways we've talked of about like
yeah,
banishing like we you can like you kind of there's a measure of knowing something that you're banishing of like there's like it like a knowing like that maybe makes you entangled, but like banishing is kind of like the disentangling. So
yeah,
I would agree with you. Like we have to like there has to be like a knowing of it and then to banish it almost like
yeah,
it's knowing its name or knowing like
yeah,
what it's the harm it's causing or you know whatever it is there's like a knowing that goes
yeah.
along with it to push it away.
I agree. Yeah, there's also like a kind of not branching off, but like continuing on with that knowing aspect is like spending time with that energy, right? So let's say I'm banishing like a bad habit, right? Let's say I'm banishing like, I don't know, smoking cigarettes or something, whatever. While I'm sitting in ritual space and doing my banishing and like sculpting the clay or writing the name or whatever the feelings with the ink, like I'm kind of dancing with that energy while I'm sitting in that space. And I'm kind of like letting it simmer and letting it brew, and then I'm shoving it away. And so, yeah, I agree. It's like there has to be this aspect of like knowing and dancing. And
I love that bent arm and then
yeah,
I love that, Brad.
yeah. Yeah. So I agree with you. I think that, but a lot of things, we kind of have to do that a lot, right? Like in the waking world, a lot of times before we can get rid of something, we have to sit with it. Like, think about like the trash, even, right? I am not taking every single piece of trash out to my big bin outside. I'm going to put it in the kitchen trash, and that kitchen trash is going to sit there and simmer until the bag is full, and then I'm going to take it out. Like, that's just the way that it works in the waking
Yeah,
world, too. Like, you have to
exactly.
simmer in things before you can get rid of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For sure.